Welcome to Workout 18. This is a full body strength and conditioning circuit. So we're going to be doing 3 rounds of 3 different supersets. First one is going to be a front squat with a rotational clean. So now the front squat, I want you to focus on just getting 5 reps per side. Now notice how we do this. We're going nice, slow, and controlled, holding at the bottom, making sure that that bell is in the rack position, nice, perfectly racked. So just 5 reps here. Now I want you to notice, number 1, we'll start from the ground up. So every rep, every set will kind of address something. So from the ground up, feet are parallel to each other. First of all, switch sides, make sure you get both sides here. Feet are fairly parallel to each other, slightly turned out if you want. Imagine you're trying to push the ground away from each other. So we're activating a little bit more, engaging a little bit more of your hips, your glutes, and that's gonna keep the overall structure a lot better, and that's gonna also make sure your knees don't buckle in. So from there, we're gonna rest 30 seconds, and then we're gonna go into the rotational clean. So we're just going 5 seconds each side, and then 10 reps of the, or I'm sorry, 5 reps each side, and then 10 reps in each direction of the rotational clean, 30 seconds between rounds, and then you're going to complete 3 rounds. So it's not a lot of rest here. This is definitely going to get your heart rate up, and this is a great workout for some full body strength and conditioning, and definitely some potential gains if you're using enough weight here. All right, back to the rotational cleans. And make sure if any of these movements don't look normal to you, if you've never tried these movements, try them first individually of this workout. In this part, we're going to do a dead start rotational clean into that squat. So notice how when I clean the bell, I immediately go into the squat. So I'm not really going to full extension. You can if you want to, but I'm staying low because I'm trying to keep the tension on my quads, on my glutes, on my back. As long as I keep tension, I'm not going to feel pain in my back. But this is a great combination and just another way to really hammer the legs. Great work. So if you don't have the clean, remember, if you do not have the clean, just stick to dead start clean here. So keeping it sagittal, no rotation, bell's right in front of you, clean it up, stand up, and then repeat to the ground. From there, you can do the dead start rotational clean, back to standing, and then from there, you can add in the squat. So it's about timing on this. And you're just resting a few seconds each side. And if you've noticed, I'm not switching sides on this, but you will be. So make sure, just get both sides, just here for demonstration purposes to make sure you see the movement in action. Very nice work. Pull that bell up, just hitting 10 reps per side here. Notice how that initial pull, because I'm staying in that low position, I really have to focus on a strong rotation and a strong grip here. So I want to really pull that bell up, explode that bell up, or pull that bell up explosively, I should say, and then it goes right into that rack position. So if you don't have the front squat, you definitely don't want to do this one. Another 30-second rest, and then we are going to hit the front squats again. So the first set, if you weren't sure what weight to use, or that was your warm-up set because you don't have time to do a big warm-up, then now you should be able to go a little bit heavier on this. So I want you to really challenge yourself as you're doing any of these movements. So challenge yourself to the reps that I have on here. The overall range would be about 5 to 8 reps. So we're focusing a little bit more on strength, some hypertrophy, again, if you use a heavy enough weight here. So rack that bell up, get prepared. So we talked about the ground. Next, let's go up. Notice how I'm going to stay in a slightly neutral pelvic position. So I'm not at in a posterior tilt like you would see in the top of a swing, and I'm not in an anterior tilt like I'm about to hinge or deadlift. So I'm in a neutral hip position, neutral pelvic position, and then I'm trying to bring, or aiming to bring, my tailbone almost directly straight down, or I should say more like my groin, strictly between my heels. So this keeps me much more vertical. So it's not a powerlifting squat. It's not a low bar squat where I'm doing a lot more hinging. It's going to be predominantly more quad dominant. So I'm going to feel that more in the front of my legs because I'm staying more upright. And that tends to happen with any kind of front loaded squatting position. Another 30-second rest. And then we'll go back to those dead start rotational cleans. Make sure you're tracking this, track the weight on this. This is a great workout. This is one of my favorite workouts. And I know if you listen to me and don't mute me during these, then you've probably heard me say that. And there's a reason that these are some of my favorite workouts. These are workouts that I put into my gym with my clients, workouts that I put myself through. So these aren't just random workouts that I put together for you. All right, back to that dead start rotational clean into the squat. So that initial pull right into the squat and then back to standing. So again, rotational clean into the squat. Your legs are going to be on fire. So notice my foot position again. So I'm starting in that slightly pivoted stance. So right now the bell is in my left hand, and it will be in the next set too. But my right foot's open and my left foot is completely pivoted over, heel is up. So I'm pivoting on that foot and I'm driving primarily from the opposite foot of whatever bell or whatever the side I'm holding the bell on. So I'm pushing up off the ground and then rotating into that rack position. And then I get right into that parallel stance. So I want to be able to freely pivot as I'm doing this. If I'm not pivoting and I'm just rotating and twisting, I'm going to put a lot of torque on that knee. So we do not want to do that. Make sure you're in a place where you can pivot fairly freely. And I love this because the application of this in just life in athletics is so important because we're always pivoting, putting pressure on different points of the foot, driving up, squatting, sprinting, picking up things. We're very rarely in that bilateral stance where feet are parallel to each other, perfectly balanced, and then doing a lift. So I'm not saying you don't want to do that. I don't want to say you're always going to be, quote functional if you don't do that. But it's important to incorporate these other positions as you go through your training. Another 30-second rest, and then we're going to go back to them front squats. So last round of front squats, and then we will be hitting the next superset. And what I like about doing workouts like this, where it's 2 to 3 movements in a row and then a little bit longer rest in between, is that it gives me time to really focus on these movements. I love big giant circuits too, where it's 10, 20 exercises and keep going. But with these 2 to 3 exercises at a time, I can really focus on these, but also get a little bit more conditioning than just performing straight sets. So now I want you to think about your midsection, making sure you're nice and tense so that way you don't flex under the weight, so around under the weight of the bell. So if you've used something that's going to challenge you, it's going to want to come down. Gravity always wins. So you are not going to let it win. You're going to make sure that you're keeping that intra-abdominal tension. So take a breath in as you come down or before you come down, and then as you come up, breathe out slightly. So you don't want to let all your breath out. You don't want to get too soft and then again, potentially flex. So keep that tension, keep your lats engaged. And that's going to be important because this is going to be very much an upper body exercise. That's the thing with front squats. It's definitely not just a lower body exercise. So we want to be careful with that too in the future as you're doing your workouts. If you're doing a lot of pressing, a lot of snatching, a lot of front squat, and then we do front squats because we're like, I want to get lower body, that's still working the shoulders. So just be mindful of where you're feeling things on a workout to workout basis. And that's why our good programming comes into play. So if you're not on the level 3, make sure you check out those programs as well. If you do have access to those, I would definitely follow one of those programs for the recommended amount of time. All right, last set. Let's go. Drive up, rotate, and back into the squat. So if you're feeling any pressure on your lower back, then just increase that attention to your abdominal wall. So imagine someone's about to punch you right in the stomach, and you're gonna be like, no, person, you're gonna break your wrist on my stomach because it's so damn tense. And then notice, just because we're coming from a contralateral, the cross body position, we're still not letting the bell is still taking the same trajectory. It's still rotating around the forearm. I still have a loose grip. I'm still doing all the things that I would do if that bell was in the clean position, or if I was in a traditional clean position, I should say. Switch sides and let's do the other side now. And in this case, I'm gonna do the same side. There you go. Drive off of that leg, stand up, get into the squat. So same idea with the breath. We're going to exhale through the point of exertion, which is that initial pull. So right there, you're going to have a just letting some of the air out. So you want to gauge how much air you release so that you keep your abdominal wall pressurized, you keep your trunk pressurized, but you don't have your breath hold. You're not holding your breath. Neck is in a nice neutral position, so it just goes where the body goes. Great job. All right, 30-second rest. Feel free to rest a little bit longer if you would like on this before we get to the next circuit. Otherwise, just keep going. All right, let's rest up, and then we're going to hit the next circuit, which was going to be a split jerk and alternating swings. Be prepared. Here we go. So you're going to rack that bell up. This is block number 2. So split jerk is going to be like a push press, but you're going to dip again underneath the bell. So if you have never performed jerks, again, make sure you go through the instructional pages to go through the exercises. Or if you're part of the advanced course, then go through those and make sure you've got that down. All right, so I'm starting from the rack position. There's some very little nuanced things we want to focus on here. Notice how I'm not in a push press where I'm not just driving the bell up. The thing with jerks is it's going to be predominantly lower body. The upper body is still doing a lot of work. We're pushing the bell overhead, but the work is going to be coming from that initial drive and then that dip again. So it's a double dip. So notice that first dip, it's not going to be a squat. It's going to be just a slight dip, and that's going to give me space to be able to drive that bell up. And then come right back to the rack position. Now, the lunge position here, what I want you to think about, don't worry about switching sides. You go on what feels comfortable. And that's kind of a general rule for just jerks in general with barbells. You don't necessarily have to switch sides on that. That's not necessarily the point here, but I want to make sure that you understand that, but we'll talk about it on the next set. So alternating swings. You can start from the ground. You can start from standing, whatever feels comfortable for you if you're very well versed in this. Just make sure we're keeping the same form. So if you've never done 2-hand swings, do not do alternate swings. Do deadlifts, explosive deadlifts, and then you can work up to swings. Notice how when I'm rotating, or that slight rotation, so when it comes to swinging, especially alternating swinging or one-handed swinging, I don't typically stay too linear, where I'm extremely in that hinge, keeping myself straight. I'm still keeping tension. I'm still driving through my lower body. I'm still driving through the ground, but I'm not trying to stay so tense every time. I'm trying to allow for a slight, this is not a swing with rotation. I'm just allowing a slight bit of opening, because that is going to allow me to utilize that spiral a little bit better, and it feels much better on my back. So if you've ever done that, and I know I've had clients in the past where when I was a very staunch, only hinge, don't rotate, this is an anti-rotational exercise, and they would start to feel pain, especially if 2-hand swings, we switched to 1-hand swings, and I noticed they started doing a little bit more open, and they said that felt better. And then I started practicing with it, trying it, incorporating more and more rotation, and lo and behold, I feel like I get better contralateral activation or engagement. So my opposite side fires a little bit more than before. So if I'm holding with my right hand, as I'm driving, I'm feeling more in my left glute when I'm slightly opening up. So I just want you to kind of practice that and try that, and then definitely go through the instructional pages as well. All right, back to split jerk, round number 2. So we're going to be doing the same kind of rep scheme, 5 to 8 reps here. So if you're hitting 5 reps and you can go 15, obviously your bell is too light. If you're hitting 8 reps and bell is too light still, then incorporate a very slow, controlled descent. So still be explosive on that lift, and then I want you to count out 5, 10 seconds. And I'm only talking about if you have no other means to a heavier weight. And if you don't have a heavier kettlebell right now, I would probably order one, shameless plug. But if not, just use a heavy dumbbell. But you didn't hear that from me. All right, notice that rack position. So the reason I like to have a vertical rack position is that just allows me for a nice smooth transition without having to readjust or reset, versus having that arm, that shoulder internally, or the arm internally rotated where the arm is across the body. We want to avoid that at least too much. All right, back to swing. So again, going back to what I was talking about, notice that slight opening where when the bell is in the back position, notice the opposite shoulder is slightly higher. So there's a little bit of a shift, a little bit of a rotation, and this allows, again, for much more engagement, and it feels much more powerful, and it feels better on my back. And I'm 99% sure it'll feel better on yours. So the thing with a swing is... Another rhyme, didn't mean it. We want to make sure you're not just driving your hips forward and getting that hyperextended state. I want you to imagine you're jumping without jumping, if that makes sense. So you're standing up straight. You're standing up vertically as quickly as you can. So you're engaging your glutes the same way as you would if you were swinging, but you're focusing on being in a vertical position at the top rather than a hip extended position, which is fine. I mean, that is what you're doing. You're extending your hips. But if you're thinking extend your hips, standing up straight and then driving your hips forward, that can lead to excessive arching and then pressure throughout the lumbar spine. So we want to try to avoid that at all costs. Again, make sure you are tracking these, your reps, your weight. Are you hitting 20? Can you go to 30? Whatever it is for you, make sure you're tracking these. This is a workout that I definitely want you to repeat because you will see some results from this. I mean, I want you to repeat all the workouts on here, but this is a fantastic workout that this is a type of workout that I would put into a full program that I would incorporate for, a macro cycle for a good amount of time. All right, back to those split jerks. Last set. Drive from the ground, push the bell up, and then dip again. So remember, that dip comes from, or that power comes from that initial dip where you're creating space and then you're exploding up. So the idea with the jerk is that it's heavier weight than you can do with a push press, and then obviously much heavier weight than you can do for a standard military press. So this is just allowing for that space, or allowing for that extra power. And then I personally like the split squat position. So if you're a compatible, the hell does that mean? A kettlebell sport competitor, then you definitely don't want to do this. This is not efficient. So you will, that's not a good idea if you're doing lots and lots and lots of reps. So play around with what position you go in. You can stay in that bilateral stance. You can go in the split squat position. I personally like that. Feels more athletic to me. Looks super cool. Back to those alternating swings, making sure that you keep that bell tight to the body. So now I want you to notice on the downswing. Notice how immediately my arm gets tucked to my body. That bell is right behind me, right close to me. This is going to make sure, so notice at the bottom position, if you could freeze it for a second, at the bottom position, my arm is completely tucked to my body. So that means that arm is in line with my spine. So that weight is being pulled directly back, putting even amount of pressure throughout my spine. So if that bell drags, then what that does is that starts to put unnecessary pressure. Now we're at a different angle than the spine. So let's say the arm is away from me on the bottom of the swing. Now, because of that angle, we're going to be putting pressure throughout the entire spine, from the cervical spine down to your tailbone, in different spots, depending on where you're feeling that pressure or where you're not pressurized in your abdominal wall. So make sure at that bottom of that swing, you are as close to your body as possible. If you were to let go of that bell, it would fly back behind you because you're in that strong hinge. The arm is tucked, shoulders are engaged, or shoulders are down, and you're not shrugging. Lats are engaged, and feeling nice and solid. And we're gonna go back to those split jerks last round. So I know I said in the beginning it's 3 rounds per workout, but I lied to you. It's actually 3, 4, and 5. So we're accumulating more and more volume for each one of these, but we're ramping it up. There you go. Slight dip, drive it up. Exhale at that point of exertion. So dip, exhale, and then drive. Drive and exhale at the same time. I had to stand up and do that real quick. Good. Keeping that wrist slightly flexed, so you don't want to get into that extension where that bell is going to flop over, that wrist is going to come down. Back to alternating swings. Good driving from the ground into standing, making sure that bell just comes to about chest height. I don't personally like to go too much higher than that unless I'm doing snatches. I'm not a big fan of overhead swings, but if you're into them and you can do them safely, then more power to you. Up to that shoulder position, chest position, exploding out. There you go. So even though I'm slightly rotating, I'm still trying to keep my gaze about 20 feet or so, 10 feet or so in front of me, wherever I can do it, where I can keep my gaze on one particular spot without flexing or extending my neck, without rotating around too much. 1 minute rest. And then we're going to get into the last circuit. And the last circuit, we're going to be going 5 rounds of these bad boys, or girls. So make sure rest up, go through your journal, make sure you're tracking everything. All right, part 3. So we're going to be going through a couple different movements again. We're going to go through an alternating pull through and the hollow body floor press. So there's going to be higher reps here, which is why we're going a little bit more sets to accumulate a little bit more volume. And obviously with that volume comes time under tension, which means if you use an appropriate amount of weight, you will see some muscular gains. So I'm pulling that bell across, reaching across, and going back and forth. So this is a great pulling exercise where you're going to hit a different angle than you would normally hit. So we're still obviously hitting the pulling muscles, biceps, back of the shoulders, but this is just going to get you at a different angle, which is going to be important in terms of building resiliency, longevity throughout each joint. So if we're only pulling in one pattern, or if we're only pushing or pressing in one pattern, then you get locked in that pattern. And yes, you get stronger, but you don't really build a level of awareness in these different positions. You don't build strength in these different angles. So it's really important to be able to do that at least some of the time. It doesn't have to be all the time, but in order to challenge yourself. So rest for about 15, 30 seconds. And then we're going to go into the hollow body floor press. So 10 to 15 reps per side. All right, so we're going to get into that floor position on the back. Notice I'm pushing my lower back into the ground. I'm in a posterior pelvic tilt, so I'm in a slightly rounded position. I would be round. If there was no ground, it would look like I'm rounded. My feet are just about 6 to 10 inches off the ground. Feet are pointed. I'm tucked. My chin is tucked. My shoulders are slightly off the ground, and I am pressing from that position. So it's like trying to shoot a cannon out of a canoe. But the stronger that canoe is in the water, you're going to build a stronger overall base. So this is a great exercise to get some core work, to get some chest work, shoulders, and it's just a fun exercise. But I got a weird, twisted way of fun, so that's also something that should be put into consideration. Now notice my forearm stays vertical, so I am pressing, and then as I come up, I'm going to make sure that bell is in line with my shoulder, so it's a nice vertical line from my bell to my shoulder. And from here, I want to really pinch my scaps, so I don't want to hyper or overextend through the shoulder. I don't want to protract, so bring my shoulder up off the ground. I want to keep my chest engaged. I want to keep my lat engaged. And 1 minute rest. We got 5 rounds of these. So first and foremost, if you had never done that before and you tried it right there, let's take inventory. How did that feel? If it felt good in that, I mean, shouldn't have felt good, but if it felt okay, no pain, you weren't rolling around, you had that core control to be able to hold that, then awesome. Let's keep going with this. Let's even try to go a little bit heavier, or let's try to get even more reps, try to hit 20 reps on this. Again, we're going for higher volume on this. If it didn't feel good, all I want you to do is just put your feet down, but keep your feet together and put your shoulders down as well. So we're just gonna do a standard floor press where you're keeping everything nice and flat. If you keep your feet together, you're still gonna get a lot of the benefits because that bell is gonna wanna roll you. You're gonna have to fight that bell, fight that rotation. If that's too hard, feet flat, spread your feet slightly so that way you have a little bit solid base, but still maintain that abdominal tension. Still maintain your lower back pushed against the ground. That's going to help avoid any kind of hyperextension or any kind of pelvic rotation. All right, round 2. Back to those pull-throughs. So if you're having an issue with this, let's say you can't you can't drag the bell. So notice how I'm not dragging the bell here. You can drag the bell if you have grass, if you have flooring that you don't mind dragging around, so like rubber or synthetic grass, or if the bell is something you don't want to scratch up. I don't like scratching up competition bells. They're too pretty. So I just lift it up and put nicely on one side. So there's a couple different ways that you can do this. You can go heavier, drag it. You can go lighter, and then just put it down gently. If you're in a second floor, third floor of an apartment building and you cannot even make any noise, then all the more challenging for you. Put it down as gently and as quietly as you can. So I'm not quite in a tabletop position just because I won't have the space with that with the comp bells, but I want you to try to keep your knees as close to the ground as you can and keep that core engaged. So both these exercises are going to be a great engagement of your trunk, of your chest, of your shoulders, of your entire body. All right, so for the pressing, you won't really notice this because I'm pressing on the other side here, but I want you to make sure you don't tuck the arm too tightly to your body, but don't extend. You can see that I'm not fully extended out where my elbow is as high as my shoulder. If I flare out too much, I'm gonna put a lot more pressure on the front of the shoulder, which I'm not looking to do right now. I'm looking to put more pressure on the chest. If you do want to get more anterior shoulder work, then that's fine, but just make sure you have the mobility. Luckily, with floor pressing, you already have an inherent stopper. The ground is going to stop you from going too low. So typically what happens if you go really wide bench pressing or dumbbell pressing and that elbow is up high and you get down in that really deep position, puts an excessive amount of pressure on that humeral joint, glenohumeral joint, the shoulder joint. So I want you to make sure that you are keeping it slightly tucked, engage the lat, press from the chest, so that way you can get a little bit more chest activation, which we typically don't get with kettlebells. And keep on repping. You're doing phenomenal work. I can tell, I can just feel it. Rest for another minute. So as with most of these workouts that incorporate multiple sets, if you're starting to feel any pain, if you're starting to feel any extreme discomfort, so not just discomfort, but uncomfortable discomfort, then feel free to switch things up. You can switch it up into just a standard floor press, like I said, with your feet flat on the ground or out and about, or on the ground spread, or even knees bent, which will be a little bit easier on the lower back. And then for the pull-throughs, if you're not feeling comfortable or if you don't, let's say that your wrist is hurting, because that can be an issue. Number one, make sure that you warmed up your wrist. And if you know you have tight wrists, warm them up before you do anything with kettlebells. And then number two, make sure that you can either use support. So what you can do is use like a push-up bar or another heavy kettlebell, and then just do 10 reps per side rather than switching back and forth. And that's another way that this will feel a little bit better. If this is just for whatever reason is not working for you, then alternating rows, one-arm rows is totally fine. Just get 10 reps per side. And if you want to get more of the benefits of what we're doing right now, then you can incorporate a little bit more rotation with that one-arm row. So rather than just performing a strict one-arm row. All right, just like with all the movements, we're exhaling through the point of exertion, which at this point is the initial pull. Make sure you're pulling across, driving it across. There you go. Keeping that shoulder engaged so we're not completely extending, releasing. Nice work. So you can keep your neck in a neutral position, or you can slightly look over to where you're pulling, as long as you're not feeling excessive pressure throughout the neck. Quick rest, and then we're gonna go back into those floor presses. So challenge yourself on this. Try to keep yourself as engaged as possible. Put as much tension through your abs as you can. Luckily, you're not going to have to think about it too much, just because if your feet are up and your shoulders are up, that is exactly what your abs are built, or your abdominal wall is built to do, is built to keep you in that position. So you're already putting the pressure there. Just make sure that you are keeping the pressure there, so that way you don't start to feel that arch. So you can't see it, but there's no space between my back and the ground. The lower ground. So keep your back as tight to that as possible, so that way that you keep yourself as engaged, and that's going to keep the pressure off of your lower back. If you let it arch too much with your feet up off the ground, that's going to put some tension on your lower back, and that will start to feel painful. I should say might feel painful. Nothing is exact. All right. Squeeze the bell, create as much tension as you can. Breathe out as you push up, breathe in as you come down. Don't hold your breath. Looks like I'm holding my breath. I am not. If I was, I'd be passed out by now. Again, make sure and then another way you can do this is, let's say you want to hit 15 reps. The floor press is easy, the weight is easy, but keeping your legs up is not. Do 5 reps like that, then put your feet down, and then do another 10 to 15 reps with your feet down, and then switch sides. So that's going to give you a little bit more of a challenge, but also a way to progress up to having feet up for all the reps. All right, next round coming up, and just as I used to do when I'm teaching my classes, I already forgot what round we're in. I think we got 2 more rounds here. That was always best. Be teaching a class of people, and then we'd finish a side, and I'm finish presses. I'm like, all right, we're done. And they're like, what about the other side? I'm like, damn it. That happened way too often. It's so much easier when I'm watching myself. All right, make sure you're drinking some water, you are hydrating, you are wiping the sweat so that you can get through these nice and safely. I don't necessarily like chalk, definitely not in these situations. More so if I'm using something ballistic, or if for ballistic low rep work, I will potentially use some chalk. But if I'm doing high rep ballistic, that is a surefire way to rip up my hands. Again, not if you're a kettlebell sport competitor, that's a necessity. All right, back to those pull-throughs. Another way that you can make this a little bit fun, what I like about this workout or this specific exercise is, again, just pulling from the different angles. Now, if you want to make it slightly unique or even more unique, is just pull in different positions. So, when you bring that bell back, you could bring it down to your feet and then bring it up in front of you and then pull back down behind you, so you can change the angles in every single pull. And that's a fun way where you're getting some benefit of this, but you're not doing excessive, you're putting excessive pressure on one particular pattern. There's the word. Great work. Quick rest. Back to those hollow body full or floor presses. I mean, they might as well be called a full press because you're going to be feeling this everywhere. All right, bring it up, tuck the chin, and press. Keep your glutes engaged. Imagine someone is trying to push your feet down and you are trying to fight them on that. So just keeping it, just hovering over the ground. We don't want it too high. If you go too high, then we take the pressure off. Now, if that's what you're trying to do, then fine, but just make sure for the purposes of what we're doing here, just about 6 to 10 inches off the ground. There you go. I believe in you. Keep doing it. And keep your core engaged. Keep everything engaged. Breathe through that tension. Don't ever hold your breath. Can't stress that enough. push through the ground. We're fighting that rotation. So that bell is trying to rotate me. And I'm like, Bell, you know what? It's not your day today. I'm not going to let you rotate me. So you're going to challenge yourself with a heavier weight if you can. Another way that you can challenge yourself with this, as long as you understand there are risks, and I'm not necessarily recommending it, but I have done it and I do enjoy it, is bottoms up position of this where the bell is upside down. And that's only if your belt is way too light, or if you want to use this as more of a activation drill. I hate saying I say activation so much because it's been ingrained in me, but you're already activated. If you're in the position, you're activated. More of an engagement drill. So if you want to focus on pushing through your chest, if you want to feel that tension throughout the bell, then by all means, feel free to do that as well. One rest, and then we'll get into the next round. This is the last round coming up, and then we are done with this workout. So still a fairly short workout, only about 40 minutes. I like incorporating workouts like this where it's a good amount, there's plenty of volume. I feel good after this, assuming that I picked a heavy enough weight for myself. If I went too light, then yeah, you can feel I can go a lot more. And then let's go. Pulling that bell across, back and forth, keeping yourself as engaged as possible. So notice I'm not going to be able to have, again, a strict tabletop position. Again, depending on what weight I'm using, if the weight is too high or too big, then I'm not going to be able to do that. If the weight is very small or it's a lot lighter, because I have to go very slow and controlled, then you can play around with body positioning. So I can have my bell, or I can have my shoulder directly over my wrist. I can have my back in a more tabletop position. I can have my knees closer to the ground. So I can play around with this in so many different ways that will still allow me to do the same exact movement, but just alternate other variables. Quick pause, quick rest, and then let us get into those presses. All right, get in position on the ground. Another quick thing that I hadn't mentioned yet, and I just want to make sure you realize, when you pull that bell up, I prefer to use two hands to get it up. So the bell's on the left side, on the ground. Instead of just grabbing with my left arm in that externally rotated position and then kind of arm barring it over, I like to use my other arm to bring it up, just as if I would do it for a get up. If I just pull that bell up, that creates a bad pattern in me. That creates a bad habit of doing that, and you'll start to feel that potentially in your shoulder, and your rotator cuff, and your elbow. I just don't like that. And once you start to get heavier, I would definitely just be careful with that. So it's something that you can train, just don't train too heavily. Too heavily as in too often, and too heavily as in too much weight. All right, last set. Let's give it everything right here, but making sure we still got a little in the bank. A lot of tension, push through. Make sure you're squeezing the bell, breathing out as you push that bell up. Drive through the ground. Finish strong, you're so close. If you got more reps, keep going otherwise. And you're done. Great freaking work. Very proud of you. You put in the work. If you're still here with me, you've gone through it all, you did everything, you put the weight in, you put the time in, you put the reps in, you will see results. It's all about consistency. And you hear that all the time. It's become so cliche, but we always have to ask ourselves, why are things cliche? Probably because there's a lot of truth behind them. So be consistent with these workouts. Whatever plan you decide, whatever workouts you decide to do, make sure you're consistent with it. Progress over perfection. If you can't, and this is another thing I want to really make sure that I stress upon with you, is if you can't get the full workout in, that's fine. Do 3 rounds, do 2 rounds, do 1 freaking round. That's better than nothing. Whatever you can do to get some movement in, to progress, to get stronger. Let's be stronger people. All right. Well, enjoy. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you're tracking, and I will see you on the next workout.